So, good morning and welcome to today's program, Brainpower and Balance, Achieving True Intellectual Wellness. I'm Nicholas Cunningham, the program manager of Livaic. We have a great presentation to you led by Kathleen Zamietra from DeSales University. Kathleen is the instruction coordinator and healthcare professions librarian at DeSales, and now she will show how to stay intellectually energized while navigating the demands of teaching, research, and administration. Before we begin, please be aware that we are recording today's session. We'll stop the recording during our Q&A session at the end and during our breakout rooms to respect everyone's privacy. Please feel free to ask your questions throughout the presentations or save them for the Q&A. And now I'm going to turn everything over to Kathleen.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. As Nicholas said, I'm Kathleen Zamietra, the Instruction Coordinator and Healthcare Professions Librarian at DeSales University's Trexler Library. Today, we're focusing on a kind of wellness that is central to our work, but is often overlooked: intellectual wellness. We spend a lot of time supporting our students' learning and growth, but much less time asking how we're supporting our own intellectual vitality. How are we balancing the cognitive demands of our roles with the recovery we need to sustain this work? We cannot inspire intellectual growth in others, especially our students, if we ourselves are intellectually exhausted. This session is about what intellectual wellness is and a few practical ways to protect and cultivate it in our own lives. So, like Nicholas said, we're going to do about a 15-minute presentation, then we'll have time for breakout rooms, and then we'll do a closing Q&A and sharing. So what is wellness? Wellness is a dynamic, holistic process of becoming aware of and making choices toward a healthy, fulfilling life. There are three key ideas here. There's that wellness goes beyond the absence of illness. It requires intentional choices, and it involves multiple interconnected dimensions. These dimensions: physical, emotional, social, occupational, spiritual, environmental, financial, and intellectual, all affect one another. When one suffers, often the others will follow. And when one thrives, it can lift the rest. So in higher education, we often emphasize intellectual output, right? So research, teaching, publishing, but we tend to neglect intellectual wellness, the sustainable, restorative side of our own intellectual lives. Today, we're zooming in on that dimension because it is both our greatest strength and our greatest vulnerability. What is intellectual wellness? Well, intellectual wellness is about recognizing and nurturing your creative abilities while continually expanding your knowledge and skills through lifelong learning. It also involves maintaining optimal cognitive health, so staying curious, open-minded, and flexible in how you approach learning, problem solving, and decision making. For us in academia, intellectual wellness goes beyond simply being knowledgeable, right? It's about engaging with ideas in ways that are both stimulating and sustainable, allowing curiosity to drive our work instead of exhaustion. When intellectual wellness is present, learning feels energized rather than draining, and challenges begin to resemble puzzles to be explored, not burdens to be endured. It's the difference between operating on autopilot and being fully alive in our thinking. And I know I have times where I feel like I'm on autopilot. Here, I like to think of intellectual wellness as resting on 5 key components: lifelong learning, critical thinking, creativity and curiosity, cultural engagement, and finally, problem solving. We don't need to memorize the formal definitions of these frameworks today, But what matters most in this moment is a moment of reflection. Which of these areas feels strong and energized for you right now? And which might feel a little bit depleted? Our intellectual well-being shifts with the seasons of work and life. The goal isn't perfection or balance in every day, but awareness. So we can intentionally nurture the areas that need space, attention, or renewal. Now, everybody can come at intellectual wellness in different ways. I like to think about intellectual wellness using a very simple framework built around three pillars: stimulation, connection, and recovery. Together, these create the conditions that allow our thinking to stay curious, creative, and sustainable over time. I want you to imagine it like a three-legged stool. So each leg supports the other, right? And when one of those becomes weak or neglected, the entire structure becomes unstable. If we have stimulation, our work, if we have stimulation without recovery, we burn out. If we have recovery without stimulation, our work loses its spark. And without connection, even the most interesting ideas can become isolated and stagnant. The healthiest intellectual life happens when all three are present and in balance. And over the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about each of these pillars and look at how they show up in academic life, in our research, in our teaching, and our everyday interactions with our colleagues and students. So let's get started with stimulation. It's the first pillar. Stimulation is not about pursuing meaningful work. Or I'm sorry, let me try that sentence again. Stimulation is about pursuing meaningful work and learning, not just about checking boxes or meeting quotas. I know a lot of us have those very long to-do lists and not always enough time in the day to get everything done, right? So stimulation is the kind of intellectual engagement that sparks curiosity, challenges assumptions, and reminds us why we entered academia in the first place. When we engage with ideas that genuinely matter to us, motivation feels natural rather than forced. So examples of meaningful stimulation include research projects that truly excite you, not just the ones that you feel obligated to pursue for either tenure, promotion, or external expectations. When was the last time you started a research project that truly excited you? There's also course design or teaching innovations that make the classroom feel like a place of discovery again, where both you and your students are learning together. When was the last time you felt that spark? And then mentoring conversations where you witness somebody's thinking evolve. And in the process, your own ideas deepen too. It can be easy to drift into purely obligatory work, right? Where tasks start to feel more draining than inspiring. So it's worth pausing to ask, where in your professional life do you still feel that spark of stimulation? The kind that energizes you rather than depletes. Reconnecting with that sense of intellectual curiosity is one of the most powerful ways we can sustain joy and purpose in our work. So here at DeSales, we are all about connection with our students, with our colleagues, and with the broader community. Connection is at the heart of learning. It's how ideas grow and evolve. When we engage with others, our thinking will become sharper, more dynamic, and often compassionate. Knowledge doesn't flourish in isolation, It thrives in dialogue. So connection can take many forms. There's collaborative or interdisciplinary research that draws you out of your disciplinary silos and exposes you to fresh perspectives. I know a lot of us have a tendency to just kind of put our head in the sand and just stay in our lane and do research that is specific to our discipline without really branching out to other departments or other institutions, right? There's community of practice or reading groups or professional networks like this one that provide intellectual companionship and remind us why we love to learn in the first place. And my favorite is a trusted, what I call a thought partner, someone you can approach with half-formed ideas who will respond with curiosity and honesty and provide generative feedback. This whole workshop came about because I had an idea about intellectual wellness, and I took it to my director, and I took it to the director of our Center for Teaching Excellence, and it started out as a DeSales faculty workshop and now has blossomed into this. So it is still worth asking ourselves, do we nurture connection simply for the joy of thinking together? Or have our conversations become purely deliverable driven, focused only on outputs, projects, and deadlines? For many of us, it's the latter, right? And so reclaiming connection as a space for wonder, creativity, and mutual growth might be one of the most sustaining practices we can bring back into academic life. Lastly, recovery is the most neglected pillar in academia. In a culture that often glorifies output, we forget that rest is not the opposite of work. It's what makes meaningful work possible. Mental rest isn't optional. It's essential for clear thinking, creativity, and most importantly, resilience. Recovery can take many different forms. For example, short, intentional breaks between tasks, stepping away from screens, stretching, or taking a walk across campus. Personally, I am looking forward to the weather becoming nicer so that I can take my, 5-10 minute walks outside rather than pace the stacks of Trexler Library. And then, we want these pauses to be able to allow our brain to reset, which will then improve our focus and problem solving. We need to treat sleep as a non-negotiable cognitive tool. Research shows that the quality of sleep consolidates memory, enhances learning, and sharpens our judgment. I think another one that most of us will struggle with is establishing boundaries. Establishing boundaries between our work and our personal life, meaning closing that laptop, resisting the urge to check your email after hours, and giving ourselves permission to disconnect fully. I know that is something that I personally struggle with. And then lastly, protecting quiet, interruption-free time for reflection and integration. Academic life is rich with information, but without space to process it, most insight is never going to take root. Most of us operate in a state of chronic under recovery, mistaking exhaustion for dedication. But both research and experience show that this cycle is unsustainable. True excellence thrives not only on perpetual motion, but the rhythm and effort of renewal. Why does this matter? Intellectual wellness influences not only our personal well being, but also our effectiveness as educators, scholars, and mentors. When we're intellectually vital, our work feels purposeful and alive. Ideas connect more easily, and teaching or research becomes inherently rewarding. But when that vitality drains, even work we once loved can start to feel like a chore. And that's not what we want. Exhausted minds do not innovate, and depleted thinkers can't model curiosity or creativity for their students. Intellectual energy is contagious, so our engagement shapes the atmosphere around us. We simply cannot inspire growth in others, especially our students, if we ourselves are running on empty. Caring for our intellectual wellness, then, isn't self indulgent. It's essential to sustaining the very work and relationships that define academic life. In higher education, there are common barriers that often keep us from prioritizing our own intellectual wellness. For example, I don't have time. Most of us feel stretched thin, but even small moments can create meaningful renewal. Try setting aside just 10 minutes a day for protected reading, a short phone free walk, or even a bit of reflective writing. These micro practices compound over time to restore clarity and focus. I am always interrupted. The modern academic workplace, or any workplace for that matter, is full of distractions. There's constant emails knocking on your door, constant pings from Teams and Slack and other, technology. So we want to make sure that we are protecting ourselves from that, right? So one uninterrupted hour where you can just zen can have a huge impact on your intellectual wellness. So close the door, silence those notifications, signal to colleagues that you're in deep work mode. Boundaries are an act of respect for your work and for your well being. Recovery feels like laziness. And this is one that I struggle with as well. Many of us have internalized the idea that rest equals weakness, but the data says otherwise. A 2022 meta analysis found that taking short breaks can boost productivity by nearly 30%. Recovery isn't an indulgence, it's a strategic cognitive maintenance that sustains high quality thinking and creativity. So, as you reflect on these, ask yourself which barrier resonates most with you right now? And what's one small step you could take this week to address it? The path to renewal doesn't start with radical change, it starts with a single intentional choice. This slide offers a few possible starting points. For example, scheduling dedicated thinking time, protecting your sleep, finding a thought partner, setting clear boundaries around work, engaging with ideas outside of our fields, and taking genuine mental breaks. The goal isn't to adopt all of these at once. Think of them as options rather than a to-do list. I know I love my to-do list and I love checking things off. Small practices can really start to support your intellectual energy and curiosity over time. So then instead of, I just totally lost my train of thought. Sorry. So I want you to think of this. Which one practice, if you could do it consistently, would make the biggest difference in your intellectual wellness right now? Sometimes that single intentional change is the start of a great recovery. I want us to kind of think that our work, it is meaningful, but unless we are intellectually there, we cannot provide the types of services that our colleagues and our students need. So remember, you cannot inspire intellectual growth in others if you are intellectually exhausted. And I want this to really land because I think this is the heart of why this matters. This isn't about being selfish. It's again about being sustainable. It's about being the kind of educator and colleague we want to be, not just today, but for the long haul of our careers. When we prioritize our own intellectual wellness, we become better teachers, better researchers, and better mentors, and even better colleagues. We model for our students what it looks like to have a healthy, sustainable intellectual life. We create a culture where thinking is valued over mere productivity, where curiosity is cultivated, and where rest is recognized as essential. So I want to challenge us. What if intellectual wellness wasn't a luxury or an afterthought, but a core professional responsibility? Okay, so that was my presentation. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into small groups for about 20-25 minutes where I want you to talk to each other about intellectual wellness, about what you can do. Follow these 4 questions as a guide. What intellectual tasks energize you? What threatens your intellectual wellness? How can we collectively protect recovery time? And what is one commitment you'll make this month? We will share our insights when we reconvene. But I really want you to take this time to talk to one another, to figure out how we as educators, as researchers, as colleagues can really help each other sustain our intellectual wellness.
All right, Kathleen, so there's two questions I have for you.
Yes.
One, would you be able to put the text of the questions in the chat,
Yep.
or either sharing, it's either like I would ask for putting questions in the chat or sharing your screen once we get to breakout rooms again so everyone can have
Yeah, I can
easy
put
access
it
to
in. I
questions.
can put them in the chat. Yep.
Thank you. And we had some people indicate they need to jump off a little bit early, so I'm just removing some of our breakout rooms. So we're going to set it for 20 minutes to make sure that we have plenty of
Okay.
time to come back together and reconvene everyone. So I will now be opening up the breakout rooms. If you just give me 1 second. All right. And now I'm opening up all breakout rooms. Okay, looks like we about have everyone back. So I hope everyone had a good discussion. We are now going to switch to the debrief and Q&A. So I'm going to actually stop the recording to give us all some privacy.